During President Barack Obama's 2015 trip to East Africa, he praised Ethiopia as a symbol of political stability and economic prosperity in Africa. However, in the time since, the country has seen dramatic changes. Economic growth has slowed, an ongoing drought has threatened food security, and clashes between citizens and government forces have left hundreds dead. The United Nations, the U.S. government, human rights organizations, and most recently an Ethiopian athlete at the 2016 Summer Games have all spoken out against the violence. So why is Ethiopia falling apart? Well, much of Ethiopia's domestic dissent is aimed at its ruling party, the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, or EPRDF. Soon after they took power in 1991, the EPRDF divided Ethiopia along ethnic lines, literally. The country is made up of 9 regions, each of which is named after the ethnicity of its inhabitants. The EPRDF strongly favors the interests of the Tigrayans who populate the Tigray region. Although ethnic Tigrayans only make up roughly 6% of the population, their representatives have seized 100% of the seats in parliament. Unsurprisingly, the EPRDF is largely viewed as corrupt, and the party as a whole allegedly wields unchecked authority on the press, the military, the lawmaking process, and the economy. In November 2015, this existing geopolitical tension erupted into protests, which were concentrated in the region belonging to Ethiopia's largest ethnic population, the Oromos. This region is mostly made up of farmland, and in 2008, the state began leasing large portions of it to foreign governments. This intensified the Oromos' existing frustration over the state's so-called master plan to expand the country's capital city into their land. The government later nixed the plan out of, quote, huge respect for the Oromo people. However, it wasn't enough to appease the people, and in July 2016, protests spread to a second region, which is home to the second largest ethnic group, the Amaras. Instead of leaving regional police to mitigate the protests, the government has sent in the military and the infamous anti-terrorism task force, which has allegedly fired live rounds into groups of protesters. These actions are tacitly permitted under Ethiopia's controversial anti-terrorism law, which gives the state sweeping powers to mitigate the threat of extremist ideologies. Since the law came into force in 2009, it has been used to justify the kidnappings, torture, and arbitrary detention of anyone who vocally opposes the government. This is all happening as Ethiopia suffers from its worst drought in half a century, primarily affecting the country's rural population. El Niño-induced rain shortages have killed up to 90% of crops in some areas, reportedly leaving as many as 10 million people in need of food aid. Of course, the Ethiopian government did not induce the drought. However, it has intensified much of the population's ill feelings towards the state, as public officials reportedly ignored early warning signs of an environmental crisis in an attempt to preserve the narrative of economic success and prosperity. With this delayed response, the country is far from obtaining its appeal for $1.4 billion in international aid. Ethiopia's environmental and political problems show no sign of slowing down. Making the matters worse, the government has effectively closed off the country from the media. Foreign correspondents encounter excessive hurdles in obtaining press visas, and local journalists are reportedly harassed or jailed for reporting on the unrest or providing information to human rights groups. With little international coverage and seemingly no end to the government's violent reign, the country will likely remain in turmoil. Ethiopia's history is very complex and plagued with corruption. If you want to know how the ruling party secured so much control over the country, find out by watching this video. Around 30% of the population lives below the poverty line, and only a small handful of government and business officials hold significant wealth. Several watchdog organizations attribute the wealth disparity to widespread corruption. In 2014, Transparency International ranked Ethiopia as one of the most corrupt nations in the world. Thanks for watching Seeker Daily. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get new videos from us every day.